Welcome to Ohio's abandoned theme parks. In this video, we'll explore 9 forgotten amusement parks across Ohio, places that were once full of life, laughter, and fun, now left to decay in silence. From rusted roller coasters to empty carousels, these parks tell haunting stories of a past that's been buried by time. Stick with me, because what you're about to see, most people never will. Chippewa Lake Park. Hidden deep in Medina County, Ohio, lies the ghost of one of America's oldest amusement parks, Chippewa Lake Park. Opened in 1878, this park thrived for a full century, entertaining families with its wooden roller coaster, Ferris wheel, carousel, and lively ballroom dances. It was a local treasure, where generations grew up laughing under cotton candy skies and cheering on summer nights. But by 1978, despite its long legacy, the park shut down without warning. There was no grand farewell, just silence. Financial struggles, changing times, and competition from larger parks caused attendance to dwindle. When the gates finally closed, everything inside was simply left behind. For decades, nature took over. Trees grew through roller coaster tracks. Vines wrapped themselves around ride structures. The ballroom crumbled, and the lake, once filled with boaters and swimmers, grew still and reflective like a tombstone. It became a paradise for urban explorers and photographers who wandered through the rotting remains capturing eerie beauty. Bumper cars overgrown with weeds, ticket booths slumped in decay, and broken swings swaying in the wind. Chippewa Lake Park stood as a haunting symbol of time frozen in joy. Lesordsville Lake Amusement Park. In the heart of Middletown, Ohio, nestled between the woods and a quiet lake, stood a beloved summer haven. Lesordsville Lake Amusement Park, later rebranded as Americana Amusement Park. First opening its gates in 1922, it began as a family-friendly retreat with a simple dance hall, picnic grounds, and a few classic rides. Over the years, it grew into a full amusement park, charming guests with attractions like the legendary Screechin' Eagle, a roaring wooden coaster that became its icon. Throughout the 1950s to the 1980s, the park flourished. Families came from all over Ohio to ride the Ferris wheel, eat cotton candy by the lake, and cool off in the large swimming pool. It had a quaint, old-time charm that kept people coming back year after year. But time caught up with it. After a fire, ownership changes, and competition from larger theme parks, Lesordsville Lake shut down in 1999. It briefly reopened as Americana Amusement Park in 2000, but the revival was short-lived. By 2002, it was permanently closed. What was once a hub of joy is now a ghost town of splintered wood and rusting metal. Giaga Lake Amusement Park. Once the crown jewel of Ohio amusement parks, Giaga Lake in Aurora had a history that stretched back over a century. Opening in 1887 as a simple picnic and swimming spot, it slowly evolved into a full-fledged amusement park. By the mid-20th century, it featured iconic roller coasters like the Big Dipper, a scenic lakefront, and classic midway charm that made it a favorite summer retreat for families across the state. In the 2000s, the park experienced a massive transformation. Acquired by Six Flags, it was rebranded as Six Flags Ohio and later merged with SeaWorld Ohio, becoming one of the largest amusement parks in the world by land area. It offered everything from thrill rides to marine shows, but behind the scenes, things were unraveling. Management issues, overexpansion, and fierce competition from Cedar Point led to declining attendance and rising debt. By 2007, the rides were silenced. The coasters stopped. The laughter ended. Only the adjacent water park, Wild Water Kingdom, continued operating until it too closed in 2016. Dover Lake Water Park. In the rolling hills of Sagamore Hills, Ohio, Dover Lake Water Park was once a beloved summertime destination. Opening in 1963, the park offered water slides, a wave pool, kiddie splash zones, and scenic views that made it a favorite for families throughout the Cleveland and Akron areas. The water park was adjacent to Brandywine Ski Resort, making it a unique seasonal destination. As the snow melted, the ski slopes gave way to swimming tubes and beach towels. For decades, Dover Lake was packed with smiling kids, lifeguards shouting over splashes, and long lines at snack bars under the summer sun. But as time passed, competition grew fiercer. Water parks with bigger budgets, flashier features, and more modern amenities lured guests away. Attendance dropped. In 2005, Dover Lake closed its gates for the final time. Now, silence reigns. The once busy wave pool is a cracked basin of rainwater and algae. Six Flags Ohio. In the early 2000s, the quiet town of Aurora, Ohio witnessed the birth of a colossal dream. Six Flags Ohio, a megapark built from the bones of the historic Giaga Lake. Already one of the oldest amusement parks in America, Giaga Lake had grown steadily since its 1887 opening. But when Six Flags acquired it in 2000, they merged it with the neighboring SeaWorld Ohio and created what was, at the time, one of the largest theme parks in the world by land area. For a brief moment, it was a powerhouse of entertainment. The combination of thrill rides, marine shows, and water attractions was a bold experiment, but one that would not last. Massive operating costs, mismanagement, and fierce competition from Cedar Point dragged the park into a downward spiral. Six Flags pulled out in 2004, selling the park to Cedar Fair, which rebranded it back to Giaga Lake. But by 2007, all dry rides were shut down. The once grand park, filled with laughter and energy, was left deserted. Meyers Lake Amusement Park. Once a sacred space turned sanctuary of summer joy, Meyers Lake Amusement Park in Canton, Ohio, opened in the early 1900s and became a beloved local retreat. Located beside a peaceful lake and surrounded by church-run camps, the park began with family rides, paddle boats, and classic carnival games. Over time, it added a dance pavilion, roller rink, and even a John F. Kennedy-themed train ride, an odd but charming addition. Through the 1950s and 60s, Meyers Lake was a favorite for family outings, class trips, and church youth groups. It had a gentle atmosphere and Christian undertones that made it unique. But as larger parks emerged and funding dwindled, attendance dropped. By 1974, Meyers Lake Amusement Park closed. It faded quietly into memory, leaving only fragments behind. The lake remains, now a city park, but the rides and structures were left to decay. Euclid Beach Park. Euclid Beach Park, once sitting proudly on the shores of Lake Erie in Cleveland, opened in 1895 and quickly became a staple of Ohio's amusement history. With a strict family-friendly policy, it became known as a clean, safe environment that blended thrill rides with a beautiful beach atmosphere. At its peak, Euclid Beach featured beloved attractions like the Flying Turns, the Thriller Coaster, and a classic carousel known for its hand-carved horses. The sounds of the calliope, the scent of saltwater taffy, and the laughter of families filled the air for generations. However, racial segregation issues in the mid-20th century, combined with rising maintenance costs and social tensions, chipped away at its reputation. By 1969, after decades of service, Euclid Beach Park closed for good. Today, only fragments remain. The famous Euclid Beach Arch still stands, marking the spot where joy once lived. Enchanted Forest Playland. Just outside Toledo, Ohio, once stood a tiny dreamscape called Enchanted Forest Playland, a theme park designed like a children's storybook brought to life. Opening in the 1970s, the park wasn't flashy, but it was magical. Fairytale cottages, costume characters, and pint-sized rides made it a favorite among families with small children. Each section of the park told a different story. Humpty Dumpty sat atop a wall, Little Red Riding Hood wandered through the woods, and children climbed inside Jack's beanstalk house. Whimsical music played from hidden speakers, and parents could relax as kids explored a world built on innocence and wonder. But as time went on, the park couldn't keep up. Animatronics broke. Paint faded. Larger amusement parks dominated the region. By the late 1990s, Enchanted Forest Playland quietly closed its doors. Now, the site looks like a forgotten bedtime story. Moss-covered cottages tilt with rot. Cascade Park. Located in Elyria, Ohio, Cascade Park was once the pride of Lorain County. Opened in the 1890s, it wasn't just a park, it was a destination. Carousels, a scenic railway, picnic groves, a dance hall, and even a small zoo made Cascade Park a full-day retreat. Thousands came each summer to enjoy the river views, thrilling rides, and shaded walkways. Its most iconic feature? The roaring Black River waterfall, which gave the park its name and drew families with cameras and picnic baskets. Through the 1930s, it rivaled larger amusement parks for attention. But as time wore on and automobiles gave people access to more glamorous attractions, Cascade's glow dimmed. By the 1950s, the park began shutting down its rides. Slowly, its structures decayed. The carousel fell silent. The dance hall collapsed. A place once filled with color and music was now overtaken by moss and rust. Today, Cascade Park has been partially restored as a nature preserve. But deep in the woods, you can still find remnants.